that this great civil rights cause, which has grown in our country, is going to continue until such times as every town, every village has fundamental civil rights, until houses are allocated on the basis of merit and not on the basis of favour, until such times as every man, irrespective of his creed or his class, will be granted a job, until such time as all the people over the age of 21 will be entitled to vote in every election in our country in a democratic country.
So anything we do today will be reflected around the world. So we've got to be very careful as to what we do. Now, we are a peaceful demonstration. We are marching along an agreed route until we are stopped. And we will make a decision then. So you don't take the law into your own hands.
Sort of anticipated that there might be trouble, didn't I, from what I was saying there? The zeitgeist of the time was youth can do everything and anything and move aside you old fogies. The reason we were having the march was in sympathy for our fellow students at Queen's, the people who had founded the group in Uri, because they had been brutally attacked, savagely attacked by B specials and loyalists on the march that they had Christmas, New Year. And we simply decided we would have this march to protest at their treatment and to show solidarity with them.
The one thing about us, we were 23 and 24, I was 3 months into my teaching career. But the one thing about it was there was nothing underhand or planned secretly about what happened in Uri. And from our point of view, the civil rights movement was as genuine as I think it's possible to be. And it was totally sincere in what it set out to achieve on that day. We were imbued with this spirit of peaceful protest.
We were a little bit more like the example of Martin Luther King of we shall overcome, linking arm in arm, walking down the street. That was our innocent approach to the thing.
And we all spent about 3 hours planning how we were going to ensure that that march was going to be peaceful at all costs. And the stewards were well prepared and everything was well prepared.
We were going to march down Monaghan Street, straight line, and we would come to Savoy and there was a right angle bend there. We would be turning left down Merchants Quay into the so-called Protestant or Unionist area of the town, which we never accepted because although it was a business area of the town and most of the business were Protestant, we never accepted that it was an actual Protestant area of the town because very few people lived in it. There were businesses there. In the lead up that week, we had talked to businesses, we had talked to church leaders in that area of the town, including Methodist, Presbyterian, Church of Ireland. They themselves told us that they wouldn't have chosen to have a march, but since we had decided that we were having a march, they wouldn't oppose it.
I would have joined the march myself and would have been very much back towards the back of the march. Whilst there had been talk that the march wouldn't be allowed to go around the full town, there was an expectation that would be rescinded. People were aware that a local unionist councillor, Aubrey Wiley, had made it clear that he had no objections, both as a councillor, as a resident and as a businessman in the area of where they were not allowing the march to go. And on the basis of that then people were saying, well, how can they really stop it if somebody like that is saying that he doesn't have a problem?
I was part of the crowd who were standing on the bridge as onlookers. Now, to our surprise, the police arrived, divided the town in two, and said you cannot go to that part of Newry. The march will not be allowed to go to that part, and gave us no good reason.
The police even told us, District Inspector Edgar told me that that it wasn't his decision. This decision to ban the march was imposed by the Ministry of Home Affairs.
The parade will not be permitted to turn left at this point.
The reason actually was, as it came out afterwards, which is what we suspected at the time, was that Paisley had told the police that if the police didn't stop the march, he was going to bring a crowd of bully boys from Belfast to stop it.
Some of the earlier disturbances and troubles with the civil rights marches, it would have been because Paisley was holding a counter demonstration.
Those that have cursed our flag have cursed our Queen and are out to destroy our country. And I want to say that we are determined as ever to resist the Republicans from Queen's University.
And we had some anonymous communication from them during the week. I remember receiving a letter posted in Portadown, and it had a bullet in it, and it said that if one drop of orange blood is spilt in Newry on Saturday afternoon, this is for you. And you had that kind of intimidation, which was par for the course.
So that was the justification the police came out with afterwards. But I mean, the obvious thing to do was to stop Paisley from coming to a town where he had no business being, and let the march go on.
But there was no sign of that in Newry. Paisley hadn't even shown his face.
The police weren't allowed to take that chance, and so they erected the barrier.
I was a young journalist. I think my task was I was halfway up a telephone or an electricity pole with a camera taking shots. There was great curiosity. What's going to happen here? We'd never seen anything like it before. This is the first time that the police would throw down the cordon, would confront the Catholic population of the area.
It was a short time later. There would have been a number of stewards in the area where I was, and the next thing was we heard the word coming back, stewards are required to the front, stewards are required to the front.
Line up, stewards. Get across. Do your duty, stewards there. Get there and line up. Get them there. Hold them up there.
The guys who started to damage things and started to break the windows of the buses had gathered on the bridge for that specific purpose.
Whenever we learned that the stewards were being called to the front to keep everybody within the march, and then people were wondering, how was this other crowd that were attacking when we heard about the attack on the tenders and on the barricade, but they hadn't been aware at that stage. That there was another group of people who weren't in the march, but who were on the vicinity of the bridge where the barricades were.
Not only were the tenders pushed into the Newry Canal alongside, but they were set on fire.
There are two halves in this protest. One were the people we knew and respected, the people of Newry who were not violent, who were there. Others who came forward to the barricades. I didn't recognise them. They weren't people that were my neighbours, and my neighbours were suddenly marginalised.
It was undoubtedly a crowd of people who assembled at that point for that purpose. Yeah. And they didn't happen to be there by chance together. No. They had organised it now. Where they had organised it, how they'd organised it, we don't know.
Yes.
But we know that it was organised. Yeah. It wasn't just a spontaneous outburst of emotion by the Newry people or by our protest.
Somebody had a plan, but interestingly, having seen the footage, I could identify a number of people who would have later had become local leading provisionals, members of the provisional movement in the area. And I thought that was interesting in that they were playing a particular role that day, which certainly wasn't supportive of civil rights. One of the main reasons probably was to scare people off from participating in civil rights marches, because the people who were supporting civil rights would have in no way been interested in violence, and many of them would have been people who would have been afraid of violence, quite naturally, you know.
We in Uri are not bloodthirsty people. And I came here today to see that the town was not disgraced.
I suppose inevitably the more militant elements would capitalise on that and push.
You had a clash of two ideologies, if you like. The objective of the IRA was to kick the British out of Northern Ireland and to get a united Ireland. The objective of civil rights was to get British citizens, if they were supposed to be British citizens, in Northern Ireland, British rights. That was absolutely an anathema to the IRA.
An inevitable result of this was that the civil rights movement quickly, those people who were not interested in that sort of stuff, this got off the boat simply. I stopped all contact with the civil rights movement, which was now beginning to move towards republicanism. So they met their aims in Uri that day to get the pot boiling.
First of all, it was the first time that I had seen that kind of violence. I think really it was shocking on the day, and it is shocking now for that reason. It was new, the days of innocence had gone.
I remember that evening when the B specials charged down the street. They were held in reserve at the Belfast Road that day in case there was trouble. It was good planning by the authorities that they would batten any protesters later on, but police tenders were thrown into the canal at that stage and set on fire.
Later on that night, my girlfriend at the time, after we'd had our tea, as most people at home had their tea, we came back up the town intending to go to the pictures, go to the cinema, right? But the problem was, what we didn't realise was, things had got so much out of hand here. People had been battened off the street, people coming out of confessions in the cathedral had been battened. I saw one man, blood pouring out of him, right? We were walking about, we couldn't believe that things were as bad as they were, because we hadn't seen this before except on television. And suddenly, and I honestly thought I was imagining it, coming towards us was this black wave, because the police wore long black coats, right? This wave coming towards us, and they were beating their shields, these shields with them, which we hadn't seen before, for riot shields, and they had battens. There were no helmets or that sort of thing. They were beating the shields to terrify you, and it was a terrifying sight. You see this wave coming towards you, we turned around and just ran and ran and ran.
They attacked everybody indiscriminately, including journalists. I remember one journalist, and this was poetic justice. He was a Daily Express journalist. He was there just beside the cathedral in Uri where Woolworth's shop was, and there was a public telephone box there, and there was a guy from Daily Express phoning his copy in to London, and they reached in and pulled him out and just split open his head. And
a lot of people were taken to hospital that night. A lot of head injuries, a lot of trouble.
This was probably the first time that there had been serious violence at a civil rights march, a movement that was dedicated itself to peaceful protest.
A lot of marches were cancelled after that because the people who were behind civil rights saw that this was going to lead to a lot of bloodshed on the streets.
All the press the next day, I remember, the Daily Express and the Sunday Express and papers of that who would be anti-civil rights, classically anti-civil rights, they had a whole middle page spread of burning tenders. It was like Mississippi burning, and Uri was like that the next day, all these horrendous photographs.
Well, Uri got such a bad press after civil rights. As a result of it, it allowed the government to portray civil rights as being violent and not really wanting civil rights, but wanting to take over.
The violence that ensued and the damage caused was fairly and squarely laid at the door of the demonstrators themselves. 6
months later, we did have the march that we planned successfully executed in Uri, which proved that had we been allowed to go through in the first place, there wouldn't have been any problems.
And the plan of that government body, Bradford, Craig especially, was to ensure there was violence in Uri that day, and to provoke it in every way possible by erecting the barricade.
Saying it suited the Northern Ireland government, Bill Craig and the Minister of Home Affairs and the various other agents provocateurs, and simply, nasty people hijacked the occasion and blackened and discredited us very successfully.
We were innocents in terms of being aware of that sort of thing. We hadn't been involved long enough to know what were these undercurrents that were happening around us.
It was civil rights being sidelined. These were the first days of a new chapter in the history of the Troubles, the ancient Troubles of Ireland for the English. And it would go on from that to all the violence that we would know.